So hello and good evening. For some of you who would not know me, my name is Subhash Ghosh and I'm the founder of TechTuesdaysUK. My warm, literally warm and metaphorical warm, given the condition outside, to all the panel members and to all the guests present out here at the 33rd episode of TechTuesdaysUK. And of course, a big thanks and a big round of applause to Reed Smith for hosting us today this evening. Before I start, some essential notes on housekeeping. The washrooms are right outside to your left. In case of an emergency, God forbid, please walk out of the door behind you and then through the main door at the lobby. And the third, but last but not the least, mobile phones at all times should be kept on silent mode. We are delighted to have you join us for yet another engaging episode of our monthly knowledge sharing series. For some of you who are attending Tech Tuesdays UK for the very first time, this knowledge platform takes place on the first Tuesdays of every month, where we spend a little more than 90 minutes on having conversations around technology. The most unique thing about Tech Tuesdays UK, as you realize, that this is a free-flow conversation where we do not have any given script or any kind of moderation. We are still a startup and we would need all the support from each one of you present out here. Therefore, please spread the good word around by talking, sharing, and reposting us about us on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube. Our handles across all the channels are the same. That's at Tech Tuesdays UK. As is the tradition, our volunteers will reach out and invite some of you to share your views about today's episode. This will happen right after the end of the session. For your records, all these recordings are going to be part of our digital touchpoints. Whether you are a technologist, policymaker, investor, student, or simply a technology curious guy, we're excited to have you part of this dialogue. So let's challenge ideas, ask bold questions, and together shape the future of intelligent systems. This evening, we dive into one of the biggest challenges of human life, which is health, and how modern technology, specifically artificial intelligence, has been impacting human health in creating a better life. To drive these conversations today on the topic health and AI, we have amongst us a panel comprising of some of my good friends. Let me invite each one of them. We have Abhishek Sharma, co-founder and CEO of Goki UK. Abhishek, please. On the left. We have Ashish Tripathi, is the CEO of Zal Labs, joining on video from Mumbai, India. Ashish, you there?
Hi Subhash, yes I am.
Wonderful.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, can see you. Wonderful. Great. And last but not the least, we have Dr. Prashant Jha, Professor of MedTech Innovation and Entrepreneurship at King's College, London. On the left, on the right. Fine, thank you. So welcome once again and let the conversation begin. Before I leave the floor open, I would request each one of you to share his or her name and organization while making any comment or while sharing your thoughts. Thank you. What you?
Thank you for having us here. We actually discussed before coming here about what to do because it is a no format.
Super.
So I hope I was audible in what I said earlier. Yeah. So I, being a teacher, as he told me in the run up, came up with a sort of things about what we are going to talk about, and this is just a start. I think it will be shaped by what you comment and what you want to talk about. It's not just the three of us talking; it's the whole room which is talking. I thought it might be very useful to have a working definition of AI in healthcare because that seems to elude everyone. Who is affected by it? And where it is headed today and where it seems to be going for tomorrow. Is that okay as a starting point? Ashish and
Sounds good.
Brooks. So how do you think, because both of you use cutting edge stuff, I build cutting edge stuff.
We use it.
And you guys use it. So what do you think? What is it and how is the human perception of AI changing?
So, from the human perception is changing in
Healthcare.
two things, in healthcare specifically. See, what specifically when so I will divide it in two parts. One is specific to UK,
Yeah.
and then rest of the world, because two things work differently.
Absolutely.
So in UK, with all the experience of working with the healthcare organization, regulators and everything, the biggest challenge or the difference I have seen is that the innovation or the technology is not an issue, right? It's the adaptation of that is an issue. It's the people, or rather an organization or NHS to say so, is not very open up. They talk about it because they want to have something new to discuss. If you even looked at the new 10-year plan of NHS, it's all full of AI adaptation. It's all there. But if you go one layer deeper, they don't even have a regulation or the framework how to adapt it. So its adaptability is a big issue. When it comes to consumer or the users or the patient, there is still a big degree, I would say, of skepticism. The trust building factor is not there, because the trust comes one, from the people who are delivering it. So if the trusted source itself is still not adopted it, so the consumer is not very hopeful about it. It is still a lot of it, like from a personal experience, when we were filling up a lot of the compliance things with NHS, we were advised not to even use the word AI in the forms, rather to define it as a rule-based algorithm. So that's where, as of now, the trust and the adaptability gap is there. As of now, people like to talk about it. People like to say that, okay, they have AI, and most of them have it, in one form or the other. Either it is, native or local or open AI. People are using it. As an organization, the adaptation is pretty fast. I would say at a consumer level, it is still an enhanced version of Google.
Yeah.
So that's where it is as of today.
Ashish, if I could go back to you on that point.
Look, I don't know how many of you have heard of a gentleman called Ray Kurzweil. He's referred to as one of the most influential Americans to have lived in the last 200 years. One of the 16 most influential Americans to have lived in the last 200 years. He started Singularity. His last position was chief scientist and AI visionary for Google. He's perhaps been one of the most prolific predictors of major inventions over the next decade, right? And he's unique in the sense that they tend to come true, right? He's also in the Hall of Fame of the US Patent Office. I have been a massive fan of his from when I was a kid, because I love chess. And he had made a prediction in chess, which which got me addicted to this guy. He happens to be on my advisory board, and someone that I have immense respect for. And he has, in fact, stated on a couple of occasions, both Steve Jobs and him, that some of the most interesting breakthroughs over the next couple of decades are going to come on the cusp of technology and biology, right? And one of the interesting things that spaces that we work in, like, and I will use Goki as well, is that we get exposed to a lot of new technologies. Now, the reality is that there's a differentiation between when you're talking about machine learning and AI, right? But there are some very interesting breakthroughs that I am aware of, and applications, practical applications. Let me give you one example, something that happened in Australia, right? Where they were looking at embryos. Of course, one of the most important things that, one of the most important decisions that will happen in any of our lives is when we get a new child, right, into the world. And of course, in IVF, you're dealing with parents that are not able to actually get a child into the world. And, there was a company that had actually come up with a technology by which they were able to observe which were the eggs that were actually showing the best signs of being the right eggs to be inseminated, because the success rates, right, of insemination was very high, right? And effectively they found a particular pattern, but as you can imagine, that it is a very, very dull job. I mean, imagine if one of us had the job of actually observing these eggs, right, and actually looking for that particular pattern. It's not something that well, humans are well designed for, right? But machines are, right? And to be able to predict these patterns, see these patterns, and therefore actually choose the right solution, right, is something that is obviously important to the parents who are actually going to become parents. Right now, this was something that was done in Australia. I'm just trying to actually give you an application of where they do land up using, right, AI in healthcare. There are multiple such breakthroughs that are actually going to come up over the next 2 decades. There's a reason why the Google CEO has gone on record saying that this is on par. AI is on par with fire and internet in terms of the impact that it is going to have on mankind over the next couple of decades. So it is something that actually is here, and it is already impacting, but will have a greater impact. To that point, I will agree that actually at this point in time, we are seeing application more of machine learning than AI, right? But I do believe that that is coming, and if any of you get the chance to read Singularity of Ray Kurzweil, I mean, he's written 6 books, I believe, right? It's very interesting, some of the predictions that he's actually making. But I do believe that it's going to have a much more, because I believe there are a lot of students in the audience, it's going to have a much bigger impact in your lives than it did have on ours, in our generation perhaps. But this is, some of them will be positive, some of them will be negative. So there's a lot of concern around it. But if you've read about when the car was invented, right? There were a lot of jobs that went out of that were lost as a result. But did it lead to a better outcome for mankind? The answer is probably yes. And I think that's the way that you have got to look at AI, because there are concerns. I think it's got to be regulated, but it is here, and it is actually going to actually have a massive impact over the next 2-3 decades.
So I think one of the takeaways is AI is not going away. It's going to be with us. I have 3 opinions. One is being on the other side of the table, which is at times when we choose which technologies to implement. One of our profound understanding is that human race, all of us, is very unforgiving to machines. So if a doctor performs surgery or a GP makes a maldiagnosis, you don't kick them out or you don't raise a ruckus. But if the AI goes wrong once, it becomes the headline of the major newspapers of the world. I have 3 observations I'll share. That's the first one. The second one is somehow there is a desire, and particularly among the regulators, it is very important that things are regulated. I am at least a big favor of sensible regulation, not blocking regulation. Is the desire for explainability. Now, the moment something is 100% explainable, it is no longer self-propagating and self-healing, because we say it is a black box. AI is a black box, and you put in something comes out, we can't describe it. The challenge is, so is your friend, and so are you. If I ask you, what do you want to eat today, you cannot always give me the same answer, and there is no particular logic to it. There is a lack of explainability even in people. So I don't know why we are so obsessed about explainability. That's number 2. And number 3, I would slightly speak in favor of NHS, because it seems to be getting a lot of breaks. Is for its worth, please try to see that it has huge responsibility and it is very risk averse. It is extremely risk averse as an organization, because if you were to look into one side of it, and I strongly recommend, I'll not throw a number at you, please Google tonight the amount of money as a percentage of its total budget that NHS spends on settling lawsuits. it doesn't want to increase that percentage of its budget. And we are a very litigious society. You go and speak to your GP, you say, oh, he was not paying attention to me. And I strongly recommend you to look at the kind of complaints that come in the NHS, which are looked at, they're not brushed aside. Oh, he was rude to me. He took out, so I'm without naming somebody, this is I do sit on some quality committees. This is a mother complaining that the child needed a small incision in the tongue because they had a tongue tie. There is a small web of skin, you cut it. The doctor was explaining it to the mother that I'm going to do this, and the procedure went fine. The mother was happy. The mother's complaint, a very long list, was the doctor seemed to be ready to pounce on my child to perform this surgery, because by the time he was explaining, he had already put a glove and had the scissor in his hand. Imagine these kind of complaints going against a robot, because it will happen, because robots will still treat humans, and robots will be powered by AI. I'm not saying dumb robots, smart robots. So it's not very black or white. It's complicated as life. What do you guys think?
No, it's not only complicated. Sometimes, like the situation like this, we deal with such many of such patient complaints coming to us also, and they will be like they're, I would say at times they're humorous, because you can't even comprehend that it can be a complaint. Like a doctor getting ready to perform a procedure is not something you complain about. Yeah, but there is people, and I think that's where the challenge is which NHS also face. You rightly said, because the diversity of and the power which the patient holds, against an NHS or against the organization through litigations, through the putting the claims and all that is huge. And it's an expensive affair. But what is also happening is it is not only making them risk averse, and it is happening in most of the places. I've seen this happening even in US. I've seen this happening in rest of the Europe and all that. Though the desire is there, but that it's they are not becoming risk averse. They are becoming risk zero.
Who will bell the cat?
Yeah, someone has to take. So they are trying to, even they have become so risk averse, or all I would say, in terms of the people who have to make a decision, that they are even risk averse to making decisions on the back end, the things which does not impact patients. I would say simply the clinic administrative jobs, or the clinic filing systems, or the documentation reading, documentation filing, which takes a huge amount of, the administrative workload on the clinicians in any of the organized one, be it UK, US, in India, everywhere. Roughly around 35% of their time goes in that. You as a GP would have also experienced that. You have to read all the documents and file it. Nothing else. But even for that, adapting an AI to do it, they say no, AI should read it, and then someone should verify it and then file it.
Well, can I give you an example? So, sorry, yes, Ashish.
Yeah, by the way, I love that example, because actually that's a very real example. I remember about 5 to 10 years back, there was actually a debate that, frankly, automated cars will not come on the streets because what happens if there's an accident? It was a legal issue, right? And it didn't matter whether the accidents with an auto-driven car versus human mistakes was lower, right? What mattered was that even if there was one accident, what was going to be the legality of who would you sue, right?
Absolutely.
And there was a debate, right, whether this will actually this will lead to the limitation of this particular technology. The problem that you have with technology is that it's like a Pandora's box, right? If you don't actually develop it, and I say this with absolute fondness because we all live in democracies, right? What ended up happening was that there was actually a debate from industry to governments. Guys, what are we doing? We are falling behind some of the authoritarian countries, because this technology is actually seeing a lot more application, and more easy path to monetization as compared to democracies. So the problem that you have with technology is that you don't have a choice, right? If you don't adopt, right, as an early adopter, then you will adopt as a follower, right? But the point is that technology will find a way, right? And that is the point that that's the way I look at. I mean, because I land up having a lot of discussions with people on how should we look at AI? Does it have damaging? I mean, are there a whole lot of very negative outcomes that we can actually foresee? Yeah, there are. But the problem is that I personally believe what you have to do is you have to lead the process and you have to dictate policy in such a way that we can actually manage it for the world rather than actually wait for it to get actually, for it to arrive and then scramble to actually try and limit application in your country. So this is why, I mean, it's interesting, but there are a couple of countries that have actually come up with ministers of artificial intelligence, right? But the reason they are doing it is because it's not something that you can ignore. It is a reality and it will happen, right? So that's my limited point on this particular issue.
So I'll make a philosophical remark, which I believe uh, deserves a mention here. I'll still then go back to the example. When we get into these conversations on what do you think AI will do, I say it's a form of intelligence. First of all, a definition of intelligence is not very clear if you go and look into it. But if we say it is intelligence, it will do what intelligence did, which means it will evolve like humans. They will create wars, they will create problem, and they will create a good world, and there will be a fight. There will be a Mahabharat going on in the AI world too. So we expect it's going to evolve. It's not going to be your servant. It might become your master, or it might become your collaborator, or it might become your auditor. But giving you a very latest example from our own NHS is this ambient AI, which is a very simple thing. Think of it like an Alexa or Google Home or Apple Home like device, which sits on the table. Imagine it was sitting here as a small device and we were talking freely. It has been trained on a lot of records and audited to the point that if I am the doctor and he is the patient and I am asking him questions, but in the middle I ask him, oh, that's a very nice hand gear that you are wearing, it knows that, well, this is not relevant, and it edits it, it summarizes the notes and puts it for you because I don't have to type. And this has been a problem for the healthcare system for almost 25-30 years, to the point that it created a whole industry in India where medicals, you would record your thing and it will send over internet, and there would be scribes sitting in tier 2 cities. This suddenly, because it was getting traction in the UK, NHS dropped a bomb last week saying this is now a regulated medical device, which means all the systems were needed to be switched off because now you cannot use it because it's a medical device. And medical device, and AI is a medical device, by the way, because they could not figure out how else to call it. All AI is medical device, and in your head, I'm sure, when you hear device, you think of a physical object, does it? So at least when I hear a medical device, I think, oh, it's a medical device. And then they started calling it SAMD, which is software as medical device.
Yeah.
But NHS, and I want to really dwell on the ambient transcriber, it has been shut down in Southeast London completely. I think there were 30 adopters. They paid money. There were contracts. Any comments on?
So the other thing is also with a personal experience on the same part of it. Even before that, the doctors were supposed to declare it to the patient that they are using
Yes.
the ambient technology. Okay? So, but it's my assistant. It's my note taker, right? I'm the one reviewing the notes, right? And I'm the one who is putting it on your record, right? So it's like, again, that comes from the lot of fear for the AI or the automation part of it. That's even not any AI actually.
It is not.
It's not actually an AI. It's just converting your voice to text, and in a predetermined format, it files it
And summarizes it
and summarizes
it. Yeah.
and edits it. So it's a very, I would say, still governed, rule based kind of the setup which was, but you still have to do it because Like no one used to declare that, okay, I have a secretary sitting here taking the notes. When you go, the human is sitting there, but just because there is an ambient one, a speaker sitting over there, you have to declare it to the patient. That's the level of fear the organizations as well as, the patients have for it.
I think there's a little bit more to that, because, for example, banks, law firms, they would usually record calls, and they will need to declare the fact the calls are being recorded. When it's technology, and it's technology which can be used, adapted, as you said, the notes can be summarized, which means something's being taken out from the original discussion. It creates interpretation, it creates a gap. So, but you can't go to the AI or go to the tool and say, who told you to do this? Why did you do this? If it's a secretary, you can bring the secretary and think, well, why wasn't it matching what the principal did? So I think there is a nuance there, that it's not just an AI risk, it's how do you hold somebody responsible or an entity responsible? If it's a person, you can identify the person. If it's an object or a tech or AI, it's harder to do.
No, so very valid thing, but in terms of the whole cycle of it, in the end, the doctor is the one who is accepting, editing, and filing it. The only thing was what the ambient used to do is to convert voice to text, and edit it. So it's very similar to what all of us have now experiencing it when we do video calls. There is a note taker who gives you the note, you read those notes, and then you publish those minutes of meetings. It doesn't get auto-published. It's sent to the organizer who does it. So that's what was happening. Accountability is you can make people accountable, and like my friend said, the right degree of accountability and the compliance is required. No one says don't control it. No one says not to tell the patients what is happening, or no one is there. It's just that when you try to overbear it, it hinders the growth of innovation. One side you want your GPs, your specialists to see more and more patients. If you look at one area of mental health in this country, for an assessment there is a waiting period of 5 years plus, right? So you file for an assessment when you are starting your degree, and you go for an assessment. Forget about your student life. Half of your professional life is screwed, because without that assessment done, you can't have any of those benefits or the support which you need. And after that assessment, you wait for another 3 months to start your medication. And then you go for your quarterly and annual reviews, which has another waiting list. So your annual review, you are already 3 years late on your annual review. So those are the realities is there, because the one thing we have to understand is that what is an AI? As of now, it is, I would say, is like, you said Mahabharata, I would say it's like a, Kalyug, which is a child face. It's very controllable, right? It will become full grown, right? And it's the way you nurture it will define what it will be when it will, grow old. So if you try adapting it, and instead of pushing it out, it will come out, very rapidly and in a very uncontrolled manner going forward. Because when you try to adapt it all of a sudden in all the phases, just because there is a state of desperation at that point of time, it will create much more problem even in healthcare. It's a very, I would say, delicate space, because it deals with human emotion, it deals with human life, it deals with human mental health. All that is the core of this sector. But I think somewhere the adaptation need to start, and some of these things first learn from the mistake, not run away from the mistake. What is happening is that we are so scared that we are saying mistake might happen, so let's not do it.
I'd want to make a question to all of you so that you become a bit more involved with us, and which is something that I use in a course that I teach around digital health. If I ask you a question, and I'll share an information and a fact first. it's around providers, which is doctors. The two professions that were most worried about loss of jobs and reputation and income were radiology and patho or microbiology, and both are essentially pattern recognition. The more experienced you are, the more slides you see, and you become better at doing something. And these are two sectors that have actually taken in AI in huge strides. It is used in NHS as a second reviewer nowadays. If I ask you a question, how many years does it take to train a radiologist? Any guesses in the class? How many years does it take?
Years.
30? Okay. Anyone else? 30 years. The problem is, and that's almost the right answer, because you need to be born first. You need to go to high school. You need to probably go into a med school. You need to survive it and say, I still want to be a doctor, which is a huge challenge in the UK. A lot of people leave. And then you go into subspecialty and specialty training. The thing is, and this is where there is a lot of chatter, and rightly so, is to copy a human radiologist takes 30 years. To copy an AI radiologist will probably take less than 30 minutes. And the problem is, when a human trains another human, there is mutation of knowledge. In AI, when you are replicating it, it's a clone. It's a bit like the situation of Matrix, the movie, if you have seen it. A lot of Mr. Andersons around. And how do you bring mutation which is only positive? Because our education regulation system doesn't prevent us from doing known harms. In AI, we don't have an AI training academy. We do not still have figured out how do you accredit or punish people. So I think these are very interesting things that will happen, and I want to sort of move the conversation. I think we are 1/3 through the thing, is where do we put it first? And my theory is that in the lowest risk buckets, and NHS has actually created, for those who work with NHS or are interested in reading news about NHS, I'm sure nobody other than me in the morning wakes up excited, what's new in NHS, which I do, I'm sorry, that's my bad habit. They have created very nice sandboxes. They actually have created sandboxes around AI where you can test. Yes, they are more promoted and less practiced, is what I'm anticipating from you. So some comments on that. Where do we go first? How do we create a sandbox? A sandbox is essentially a safe place where you can test stuff, and if it fails, it doesn't create a explosion in the whole system. It's like detonating a bomb in a sandbox, so that if it explodes, only the box gets damaged.
Yeah. So I think, first of all, identifying the problem. So even if you look at NHS, right, the biggest problem today is what I see is that not enough time for patient care.
Yeah.
Not enough resources for patient care. Right. There is no dearth of how in terms of the money or the budget which NHS spend on in doing that. So it's not a resource problem. It is not the problem. The willingness is not a problem. I have met probably 100 doctors in the last 2 years. Not even a single one does not want to put time in patient care.
Yeah.
The majority of their challenge remains is, I have to do a dozen other things. I don't have any time. Most of the
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
This is something I need to tell you, so that when you go to the NHS next time, you'll feel better. So with my colleagues, we did a study which has now got around 450 respondents, all GPs. It was a study done among GPs, and we said we are actually developing a form of AI to simplify tasks, because I said this is the lowest hanging fruit. Let's attack that. And we thought, if we tell them an option that if you had extra time, what would you do? And we gave them options that you will not be paid less. This is your work day. You save time. At the end of the day, what would you do? We gave them options: sleep, go out with friends. We said, okay, option E is see more patients. We thought, who is going to click on that? It's quite sobering that more than 80% of doctors in this country clicked on that.
Yeah.
That we want to see more patients.
Yeah.
Sorry, please.
No, it's true.
It's true, yeah.
And I'm not surprised, but like, if you look at some of the senior GPs who have 3 out of their 6 working days in a week goes in finishing up the administrative part of it. Right? So you can imagine how much loss is there for them. So those are the few of the areas: administratives, documentation, pre-diagnosis, part of it. Even all these things which can be done in a sandbox or in a very controlled manner, even in a real life or or taking it live also will free up a lot of time. So if I have to take it, I will say, okay, this is the stage 1. Instead of defining, I would say that, okay, these are the 4 areas, 5 areas where adaptation of AI is there, because there is no direct risk to patient's life or well-being in this one.
Yeah.
Right? Even if one document gets filed, wrong, it is not impacting anyone health or which cannot be taken care of. It will come back, when you read the patient file, that one document is missing or is misread. But those are the things which I think should be the stage 1. The second thing would be probably the analysis or the diagnostic part of it, to speed up the treatment part
For
of
which
it.
I think Ashish would be the best person to do.
To do
Yeah.
that, and then go it from there. It cannot be like, okay, I will blanket take it away, the AI talking to patient and try to diagnose their condition. It won't, and it should not be at its current avatar. AI has still not reached that. You rightly said, the all the permutation combinations of rights and wrongs, and what faults and the behavior is still to be learned.
Yeah.
But these are the easy, low hanging fruits of improving the healthcare system or and giving a better care for the patients.
Ashish.
So let me give you a thought, just for everyone to think about, because it's something that we can identify with. When the first Chat GPT came out, the first version, they said that it had an IQ that was just slightly below Einstein's, right? The second version came out 1 year later, and it had the IQ 10x of Einstein. And the second year, the third version came out, and it's not a long time back, right? It was 10 times over, so 100 times the IQ of Einstein. The reason I'm actually giving you guys this statistic is because actually the real elephant in the room that everyone is actually struggling with is what are going to be the jobs, right?
Yep.
If AI starts achieving its potential, right? The reality is that so I'll take a slightly different view of to Abhishek, that it's not. I'm not so sure that it is about what is the low hanging fruit. The reality is the impact that it's going to have, and look, let me tell you about how we see it in our industry, right? Like, if you guys know anything about us, we've made a very big breakthrough in. We've just finished our NHS study, but essentially, this is going to be the first all cancer blood test, right? But interestingly, while that is in the public domain, last month we got the Edison Award in the US, just before Jensen Wong got his Lifetime Achievement Award. But we also spoke at SIP Balance in Switzerland, and we exposed what was actually the B Cubed product, where what we've realized is that we can actually give you the somatic mutation signatures and the pathways readings that you get from a physical biopsy of the blood of a tissue or a tumor. We are able to get it from the blood itself. The reason being that what we have found is the cell that is growing into the tumor in the blood, right? Now, effectively, initially what we were trying to replicate was if we could match the patterns that you were getting from tissue. But as we're collecting more and more samples, we are realizing we are finding patterns, right? Because when we look at case studies of patients, we are seeing patterns that actually were not found in tissue, but we are finding it because we've got so many samples of our own of a type of cancer of so many different patients. Now, what we realized is that initially we were throwing data scientists at it, right? And what we realized was that we needed to actually build an AI/ML system at the back end, because the data is becoming so complex and so varied, right, that actually my data scientists would die, right, if they had to process so many samples. But because we've got an AI/ML system, it is giving us learnings or patterns that we had not even actually known, right, was possible. And that is what we are finding extremely interesting, right? So I personally, I mean, if I can, if I mean, I don't know how the rest of the panel sees it, but I personally think the challenge that you're going to have with AI, I mean, I believe one of, just to give you another example, right? My twin brother is a very famous author. BBC calls him the Tolkien of India, right? And he was speaking about this, that one of the top, studio execs from LA has actually said that I wouldn't be surprised in a decade if 2 movies are made, right, by studios, and there are not more than 2-3 people working in that studio, right? So now consider, right, what are the jobs that are actually getting taken over, right, because of the, but in one way, while that is a challenge, in another way, that is freeing up our time to do a lot of work. Now, historically, right, mankind has always found a more efficient system of actually leading to a much better outcome because we were able to get efficiencies. But the pace with which AI is changing the world, the question really is whether we will be able to actually create, right, growth for people at that pace. And I think that is the fundamental issue that people are worried about when it comes to AI. I don't know what the rest of the panel feels, but this is something that I've actually heard in in Singularity in so many different forums, right? Because the pace of growth is extremely high at this point in time.
I want to make a comment, and this is something which is rooted in facts or reality rather than my opinion. It's not my opinion. I think there is this bit of hype around AI which is actually harming AI. It's about us raising a child and telling them to the whole neighborhood that this is the most awesome child. It's a bit of hype, and I'll explain why. So at this moment we don't have singularity, and again a very brief thing is it is something that can think and act and work independently across multiple tasks. That's one. The second thing is if anyone is interested in, like I said, in the morning you wake up and say, what's the latest paper? So Apple very recently published a very interesting paper, right, which then debunks this myth. And I have anyone who is a big fan of Hindi movies like I am, I say AI today is like that student in Three Idiots who is a Rattu Tota, is someone who memorizes and then regurgitates. Ramalingam Swami, if you can see the metaphor if you have watched the movie. What humans are like is Fungsuk Wangdu, because they can come up and solve newer things. And Apple just demonstrated that. When they changed the rules of a game, AI completely collapsed. And I recommend all of you read that paper because it helps you understand what am I dealing with. Because there is a lot of hype around AI. If AI has to become part of our lives, it has to become as boring as a microwave. It is there, it hits my stuff. Yeah, fine, yes, there is some, you guys don't bother, anyone in this room bothers about the frequency at which microwave is emitted and what's the thickness of the metal. Yes, I do, I'm sorry, but once I have figured it out, I feel safe. I say, okay, it's not going to zap me when it explodes. So it has to become boring, and at this moment it is extremely good, and I completely agree with Ashish. At this moment it is very good at doing mundane, boring pattern recognition. So can we give it what it is good at and stop pretending and creating news what it is not good at? If someone is a real wonderful kid who is very good at playing cricket, what we are currently doing is saying, how will this boy perform? How will Sachin perform if we throw him in the football field? This is what we are doing with AI at this moment. How will a great footballer perform if I ask him to swim the English Channel? I don't know. And why would I do that? I'll let him run on the football field. That's my opinion.
No, I totally agree. And when Ashish was saying about the creative studio, a joke came into my mind, an AI one. So when this whole cartoon thing making on the chat GPT became famous, few weeks back. So there was this meme which was floating. I found it very interesting. I thought AI will help me so that I can do the painting and the singing. But right now I am doing the work and AI is doing the painting and the singing. So you're very right. So I'm not worried about the jobs getting lost because of AI. Not for at least for few years.
Jobs will get lost. They will get changed.
So it's not that it's people will evolve. Like the farmers evolve from plowing their own field to from the bullet carts to the tractors to automation. It evolves, so it will become more and more, freeing up more for doing more. So, and that's what when I said about the even in a GP practice or in a healthcare also, giving up those mundane jobs, or that part of it, which occupies all the clinician time, and train AI to do that. Because there is a pattern to it. There is a fixed way of doing those jobs. But if we do it as a human, one, it is boring, and the second, it takes too much of time.
And we complain. We get tired.
We get tired. It's exhausting, mentally exhausting, to do the same thing again and again every day, and you start to make more and more error.
Mistakes, yeah.
Right? If you ask any practice, because all these practices today, we might think it's NHS, but all of them are individual business owners. Why do you think that there are so many practices closing in this country when NHS is spending that much? Because they are not able to keep up the operational expenses. It is becoming financially non-viable for them to operate, and they want to see the patient. So that's where I think that I would say the handshake as at this stage between the AI and the healthcare is, one is identifying probably the pattern and the aiding in the research and doing
new drug discovery,
new discovery, all those things, and also taking care of the mundane part of the job is there, so that more efficiency can be bring upfront, the front facing side of it. And yes, it will evolve, and there, yeah, you will go probably into a store and you will talk to an AI, but that's going to be future. There is no this thing, and that's how the remote care will work. It's not that you can.
You already have Pepper around. It's a bot from Japan which looks after
it. There are already bot coming up for the talking therapies. Which is basically the psychologist consult and everything which is happening on that one. If you look at it, even in a developed country like UK, roughly around 45% of the population is rural UK. Where getting an access to a GP is tedious part of it, and for that, aging group, someone has to support it. That's where the future of AI and the healthcare is there. You can't put every human supported by another human. You need to build up those assistants and those network to bring it. But it will come. It will come. But we have to start somewhere and take it in phase and have some trust. Have interest in humanity, because.
Can we ask them this question? What do you think would you entrust today, knowing all we know and hear and read about your healthcare to an artificially intelligent machine? What would you feel comfortable? Yes, please.
So I'd like to suggest there are two areas AI benefits you've not brought out. One is the area of prevention.
Oh yes, absolutely.
How can AI analyze data to help alert you to the prevention of disease or the prevention of the need to be hospitalized? And I would also suggest that doctors could get closer to data if there were systems to help them do that. And AI is only part of the system. So I think the job issue needs to be looked at from a systems point of view, where AI can help the doctors a lot more processing the mountains of data that are often siloed.
Well, you're absolutely right. I think you would be the best person to talk about prevention.
You are absolutely right in terms of the data, or even in terms of enabling doctors, to finding those cohort of patients, finding those, using the technology and the AI to enable those patients in terms of most of self-management or guided care for their long-term condition, which is the biggest burden,
Right.
for the healthcare is where it has a very effective use, right? It is non-medical but high impact, as well as more predictable for any of the doctors to know their patients better if they have, because it will help create what we have seen in from a is a longitudinal data of those patients, over a period of time, which makes it more predictable.
Well, I'd also say those two benefits are very important to explain, so the distrust of AI does not resurface.
Oh, that's very true. Yeah, absolutely. Well, for your second point, there is something I want to just share. Is today, if you look at that kid which is growing, and I really like your example, Ashish. I think you have some storytelling genes that you share with your brother. So clearly, I think what we are doing is we are so anxious about our child that we are throwing it out and let some rogue people raise it. When you look at democracy versus authoritarian regimes, and another sad part is if you go into research labs today, because we have the OpenAI and Cloudy and DeepSeek. Would you be comfortable getting treatment if your doctor put a statement on their entrance saying, I studied medicine using Wikipedia, which is what the bots today are. And that's where I think we need a very concentrated effort to teach it on actual medical content. And one of the things that you just rightly said is doctors now have this capability of a large language model working just on patient records, and I think it's called chat EMR, where you can ask questions, and this question is not being answered by a bot that has just scraped the whole internet, but it is just looking at patient records and saying, hey, you should not miss it, because it is doing pattern recognition on the data that matters. I think these are very important points. What else would you guys want?
Question coming from India.
Oh, yes.
Number to there.
No, look, incidentally, that's actually a very valid point, because, I mean, the whole gadget industry that we are seeing and the kind of advancements we are seeing with the kind of wearables that people are wearing, right? The amount of data it's capturing is phenomenal. And the point is that there are patterns that people have actually been able to identify. Like, for example, there was a theory going around that, before you get a heart attack, there are certain, you will actually see a weight loss or something like that, right? And, there was actually a company that was talking about having a weighing machine when we get up and go and brush, so that on a daily basis, it's actually measuring your weight and so on and so forth, and actually feeding it through the system. And, it's giving you intelligence on the basis of that, right? So I completely agree with you. I mean, the reality is that this is going to be something where we're going to see a lot of innovation. And I also agree with your point that there's a lot of fear mongering that is actually happening about how what are the harmful things that could actually come out of AI. There are a lot of positive things as well. And the point is, at least from a healthcare perspective, I'm actually seeing a lot of very interesting companies working on specific bits of deep tech that I think are going to have a profound experience, influence on our lives over the next decade or so.
I think I asked this question, which I've just posed to you, to a lot of residents of Lambeth, which is one of the boroughs here. And the answers that came out, I'll just summarize it and then open it for comments. They said, we believe that AI can do healthcare because what you guys do is disease care. which reflects your point, because AI can actually do healthcare. Doctors and NHS is for disease care. It's not National Health Services, it is National Disease Services. And we said it's very political, but I get your point and you're right. Sorry. You.
So I like to add few stuff on it. How Ashish said that AI is growing and all. When we are talking about AI at the moment, we all are just talking about transformer-based model. The first paper came in 2016, attention is all you need. Then few papers came on. During that time, the transformer-based model was just 1.6 or 8 gigabytes. Nowadays, if you look at ChatGPT 4.0, Quen and all, they are like 28, 40, 70, sometimes even 70 gigabytes. So of course it's growing, but it's not growing by the logic of thinking or understanding. It's growing because it has used ton of open textbook from which it can see and answer, like how you said, Popot or something. But my question is, because we have so much huge amount of data, we have so much this innovation and all happening. Is transformer-based architecture is AI, or like is it the only solution? Transformer-based architecture. If it's good in pattern recognition and it's good in understanding what we are doing, but is it a solution for everything that we want to do? Okay, we have to make a audio encoder and decoder transformer-based architecture. We have to see the pattern recognition instead of neural network, transformer-based architecture. We want to see if our patient is going to get a heart attack. Transformer-based architecture, even though it's much more costly and not that cost-effective, but I think transformer-based architecture is not a solution to all of that.
I can take a stab and then I'll want my colleagues to respond. I do happen to be trained as a computer engineer also. My theory is very simple. Any new technology that comes will go through cycles of bust and boom before it becomes as boring as a microwave. Currently it's in the boom phase. It will bust. It will then again have a boom, and it has bust in the past. We think of it because we are looking at last 2 years of ChatGPT. AI was a very cool, sexy term 15 years ago, then it went out of fashion, then it came back, then it went out of fashion. It will happen. So currently that is in fashion. You are in Bangalore or in SF and you go around to Y Combinator and say, I'm doing AI for X, they will say, yes, please. They will stop doing that after a few years. It will become as boring as a microwave. And then somebody will say, this is not working. I need a microwave that can also do grilling. So I need a new material and I need coils. They will come up with a newer way of solving problems.
Okay, we'll just take the question from India. Namrata? Hello.
Thanks. Hi. Yeah, thanks, Subhash.
Oh, sorry, there's someone online.
Hi, I'm Namrata. I work in the digital space. I've been there for the last 20 years across sectors. I don't come from the medical field, but I just had a question. I'm curious. One, how far are you sort of, Ashish, you mentioned about using a lot of the data, the voluminous data for new emergent patterns that you were seeing. How much of that work are you doing also for checking out what are the new emergent sort of, health issues which have not been identified as yet or are pretty much preliminary and that you may be using the AI models for? Is there any work that is being done at NHS or outside? More out of curiosity than anything else that I'm asking this.
So, Namrata, I think the way it works in innovation is you focus on what is the low-hanging fruit when you're actually coming out with an innovation, right? The patterns that are easy for us to see are patterns that we can actually take from tissue banks, right? And actually, therefore, draw parallels with the information that we are getting from the blood, right? But there are some very interesting patterns that we have seen, right? The challenge is that, when you're trying to actually get that, while we will file patents, etc., the point is for it to actually lead to, an outcome where the test could actually practically be used, it becomes a much longer path, right? If it's still a hypothesis. So therefore, the lower hanging fruit tends to be stuff that, because the use case is obvious, right? Instead of actually having to actually do a tissue biopsy, if we can give you that pattern through a blood test, right? I'm sure a lot of you are going to be comfortable with that. I mean, in cancer, a lot of us are actually open to the idea of biopsies because we're fighting the battle of our lives, right? But if we can actually show it for some other diseases, that has immediate value. But believe me, the problem is that it takes a little more time for that to be accepted as compared to cancer, right? So we land up focusing more on cancer, if that makes any sense, right? Because we can show a pattern that you're used to seeing just from a different purpose, from a different method.
No, thanks. That definitely helps. I also have it's not a follow-up question, just a different question in terms of health literacy. Now, health literacy is not something that, we've managed to do at scale because of a number of constraints, but AI allows for that, because earlier the forum was talking about low-hanging fruit, and looking at use cases which are not a threat to human life. On the health literacy front, and this is for anyone in the panel, what's your perspective of using AI, for propagating it and for scaling it, per se?
See, so I think for the health literacy part of it, it's not actually, which is AI which is there, because when you are talking about educating someone, there is already enough knowledge bank or the content which is already existing, which need not to be analyzed and given it to them. The education is about what is there, you learn, and then the AI comes post that for me. That when you have your base knowledge information and then you evolve from here. And it also comes back to your question, what you ask, when see all the models is there, and this happens in human also, right? A doctor today is make an information about that you have a ABC condition is from the data what he has gathered or what he has studied in the medical school, right? Or the specialization what he has done. He has used that as a knowledge bank, and the data from all the research which he has done or studied to make that diagnosis, right? Same thing what the AI is also doing. He's processing that tons of data, and making that decision. What we are talking about is the, identifying the anomaly, something which is not their part of the data side. And I don't think AI has reached there, like you rightly said. It is, as of now, is in a way availability of what is fed into it and what is the possible outcome out of it. Is that's what AI does today. It does not say it could be another thing. So yeah, so in a medical metaphor, yes, AI can be still a normal doctor, but it's still not Dr. House. Okay, when he's looking for a thing which is not as per the pattern, which is not as per the obvious choices, or the one which is the most uh, the loud one. So that's where the AI is not there today.
Yes, I think. I hope. Sorry, please proceed, Namrata.
No, thanks. That's helpful. I'll maybe take this offline. I have a context to it, but I'll maybe take that offline.
But Namrata, to your point, by the way, it's been going on for some time. I think we all know of Dr. Google, and now it's become Dr. ChatGPT, right? Because a lot of people actually come back, right? I've spoken to doctors who say that, they ask us questions like, but ChatGPT was saying this, right? So, on the positive side, it actually leads to, awareness. On the negative side, right? Everyone seems to be asking ChatGPT rather than actually looking at, getting a doctor's opinion. So frankly, I've heard from a lot of doctors who just get very irritated by people who
I'm one of them. So I want to, Namrata, I want to give you some very interesting bit of information, which is real, has affected me in a few milestones of my career. So I'll talk about two of my past employers. One is the British Medical Journal. I was the editor of it for a long time. And during my days with that, we had a product which we shut down. It was called BMJ Patients. Now, what that product was somebody with sufficient knowledge of medicine looked around, ensured that the content was correct, and wrote it in layman's language or laywoman's language, and put it in a format where if you said, I want to understand about something, I want to go and look at it. We had very few takers, and in fact you have a version of it on the NHS website. If you generally have conditions, you can go on NICE website, NHS website, and Mayo Clinic has one. There are like scores of them. My second employer, Apollo, partnered with Google to create something called health cards, which is when somebody in India, and it was only for India product, you had to search from an Indian IP to search that. When you search for something, they would come on a right side as a block of information where somebody, which means editing had happened and you were not consuming crap. Because if you and I today decide that all of us will write a blog and we will cite each other, ChatGPT will think it is super important. And so will the search engine this is search engine optimization, because it's a chatter. The search engines look at noise about, oh, this is trending, it's hot. So it says this is useful. And if we all say, in fact, I think but this is on record, I shouldn't say sensitive things. After that, I'll give you a real example of a question I asked from a medical student when I was interviewing them here in UK of what is COVID, and they gave me a definition, and I asked them, where did you get this definition from? This sounds not right. He showed me a blog after that, and it was really trending. So the thing about health information is, and I'll conclude with that, is health information is there, but, and again, ChatGPT scrapes the internet. There is a lot of health misinformation. That's why ChatGPT and Google gives you rubbish, because for a text scraper, which is someone who goes and reads, a doctor is a better doctor because they have read curated textbooks in a medical school where someone is certified to teach them. You put a doctor among their 5 professors are all quacks and they read Wikipedia, they will come out as a doctor, but they will be Dr. Misinformation or Mr. Information, whatever it is.
They'd say you made a very valid one. So couple of years back, pre-COVID, we ran a national challenge in India.
Yeah.
India Health Quiz, right? So the format was like, we used to engage with the users. They have to just download our app, and we used to ask them question, rating them what is their understanding of health is. So once the question was, their understanding of rating it for the beverages, which one is healthier, right from water to the Diet Coke and all that. You won't believe 80% of the people thought Diet Coke was healthy because there was a word diet in it.
Right.
And it's a fact. And we were like, seriously, they didn't read the word Coke in front of it. It's a diet written over there because that's how it is being marketed, popularized. So even if you go and say that which is a healthier version of Coke, though that itself is wrong, there is no healthier version, but it will say Diet Coke is a healthy version. So that's where the whole data scraping, and that's where the ChatGPT is at today.
So large language models, if it is trained on crap, it is GIGO, garbage in, garbage out, and that's what happens. And when you read stuff and it gives you super bizarre answers, the point is, how do you train it on things which are sensible? And when you have trained it, yes, then you can have a bit of trust into it. I think we will eventually have a graduation exam for LLMs. I believe they will have to go to a Viva where Cloudy will ask some questions to ChatGPT and Gemini would moderate that. What do you think, Ashish? But are there more questions online? I'm sorry, I thought Ashish had a question. I didn't realize we had. Ashish, you have a opinion on a Viva for ChatGPT?
A graduation ceremony.
If I can, I think it's just wording it in a slightly different way. But frankly, AI has a massive application right now in things that are dull, in things that are long, right, and the things that are boring, right. That is where it actually can do a lot of stuff. Because to be very honest with you, humans aren't best designed for those kind of roles, right? Repetitive work, doing it for the same work for a very long time, and so on and so forth. But having said that, Dr. Jha, I'd love to actually speak to you about this. I'm actually seeing certain developments that are happening, which I think are going to change that to a certain degree, and that's the interesting thing. This technology is just growing.
Absolutely.
A lot.
I agree.
The changes that are happening are quite fascinating.
I think we really want you guys to talk. I think we have been talking for a while. I need some water. Any comments on where you think our healthcare will be headed? I think we got 2 very valuable inputs: prevention, which is very useful, and also long-term care.
Long-term remote care.
Remote care is quite important. Any other thoughts?
I'm Shagun. I'm a student at University of Bath. I mean, we already share like a lot of data, like health data, on a regular basis with medical devices, or like even non-medical devices are like smartwatches. They check our calories, our fitness, etc. on a regular basis. And the question that you asked about how much do you trust AI with your medical data, I feel like we already share so much of our data, so it's more about putting it in a way that is actually useful and actually can help us. And that's where I think like personalized medicine can come in a really amazing way with AI, if done correctly and if trained correctly.
I think you have just given us the two answers. If done right, for the right motivation. You know, NHS is like a religion in this country. I say this country, if you ask people, currently most of the people say no religion, but if you add a religion tab, say believer in NHS, people will say tick, yes. I think majority of the world will do that, like we have in cricket in India, right? Believer in cricket, yes, tick. I think one of the biggest things that people trust is, it's a slightly deviant from our agenda today, but just dwelling on what you're saying, is are you doing it for profit? Are you monetizing your data without your involvement, without your consent, without your permission? And that's where trust starts to break. And that's why people, for some reason, trust Proton Mail, which gives you 500 MB more than what they trust Outlook or Gmail, which gives you, at times with certain tricks, infinite storage. I think trust is a component, and misinformation created by AI, I think a lot of information that people consume on a day-to-day basis about health is not even written by humans anymore. All the feeds that they see in TikTok, no, sorry, it's TikTok, sorry.
Instagram,
I'm a big fan of those chewing gums which are TikTok. So TikTok and Instagram is not human created anymore. So they are consuming gibberish built out of gibberish. So that's a big, huge, messy cycle of misinformation that will fuel these fears about AI. I'm surprised, and I must confess, I am forced into some WhatsApp family groups. I'm not sure how many of you. It's insufferable, and when you exit, they call you and say you left. So it's insufferable, but you have to. I've figured out ways of not seeing it. There's conspiracy theory about cold, cough, heat, everything, and apparently they believe it. They believe it, and it is. You will have to look at the impact of AI on trust in healthcare. It will be. It is a huge challenge. So it has to be in some way. It's a tool. It's an instrument. It's a weapon. And we'll have to look at how do we deal with it, because to earlier create so many memes, you needed people. Now you don't need them. You give an instruction to ChatGPT, it creates 20 interesting memes. In fact, I have tried these prompts. I think I'm getting a diploma to myself in prompt engineering. I said, can you make it more appealing to South Asians or Indians? It brings characters. Please go home and try it. Ask ChatGPT to generate it, and it will make it more interesting to Indians. It puts a photograph of chili in the photograph on the table. It is doing that. So it is so easy to create misinformation. Ashish.
Dr. But I do believe that, the young lady who actually made that point, I do believe personalized medicine is something where we are actually going to see a massive amount of application, because I do think, it's just the kind of the way you can actually capture the data, see the pattern, and therefore see the reference point is actually quite unique because of the way that data is being captured and learned from, right? But I think her point on how we actually control the data, right, is the key reason that I'm actually trying to say that frankly democracies need to have, right, policies and a stake in this, right?
Oh,
so
I
for
agree.
example, let me give you one example that you might find interesting. The reality is, this actually happened with drones, right?
Yeah.
I love, I'm geeky like that. Like every time I used to go to the US, I'd love to go to these science things. Okay, and for like a couple of years, like about a decade back, it's just every year it was all about drones, right? And frankly, the US was way ahead. And then I don't know if you remember, there was a campaign that was run about this video about these drones coming into schools, and these swarm drones and striking kids. And actually, it actually was a campaign, and that started a huge campaign in universities against drones, right? And what ended up happening was that a lot of democracies actually went, hang on, we need to actually get our policies right, right? And about 3-4 years later, industry went back to governments and said, guys, what are you doing? We were ahead of a lot of these authoritarian countries, right? And you have pushed us straight back, right, behind them, because you guys would not actually work with us. So actually what democracies need to come up with is actually policy frameworks so that they can actually control how data is actually being stored. In health at least, I think there is policies that a lot of governments are coming up with.
Oh
right?
yes,
But I
absolutely.
think they're very important, because the truth is that if you do not, let's go. If you do not have policies, then you will be stuck with actually following what is being done in other countries, and that's not where democracy should be.
Can I ask you a question just for clarification? I think you have raised a very important point. I acknowledge that. Would you trust NHS with the data that you are giving? When I say NHS, I intend to mean the government, or it's a public body, or would you rather trust a tech billionaire handling that?
There's different reasons to trust both, right? Because the NHS has the whole, we care about you, we're healthcare, disease care, whatever you want to call it. The thing with the whole tech side is that at the end of the day, everyone will be treated somewhat the same because you're just numbers. And so it's just going to be data, and no one's going to get interfered with in that way. In a sense, what I mean by that is, I feel like we still see bias in the NHS on a systemic level.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
That if you have this data that's controlled by a tech billionaire, because we're all just numbers and we're all just data, because he's just making profits or she's just making profits, whoever they are, it'll be far more fair.
I'll just want to give you 2 bits of information, I think both from NHS, and it's very, very important. EHR systems are foundation of AI coming into healthcare, right? And I work for a hospital. It's in public news, so I'm not breaking some bad news. We are one of the biggest NHS foundation trusts in the UK. Not the biggest, but one of the biggest. We have had data breaches, and those are challenges about your. There are 2 kinds of data. One which people would not bother about so much. How many steps did you walk? What's your heart rate variability? It's fine. But there are other bits of data. For example, our whole path lab data got hacked, and then you had threats, and these are public threats. You can read it in the Guardian, you can read it in the Telegraph, that we are going to release a list of people in the borough who are HIV positive. This is real. This happened. Number 2, another interesting fact, and because when we talk of AI, we need to talk of data governance. We need to think about who is the custodian, who can you sue if things go wrong, and can you sue them? Who is accountable and who will be responsible? The second very interesting thing, which is early days of AI, because ML is the mother of AI. ML is the mother of anything intelligent, which I call AI. AI is anything intelligent. In the COVID era, we had higher number of people, particularly of BAME, which is a word used for non-whites in this country, and there is an ongoing investigation that because the sensors that monitor SpO2, when you decide do you need to give someone oxygen or not, do you need to put someone on ventilator or not, did not do a great job on measuring the right SpO2 because they were trained purely on people of white color, but not others. And I'm sure this is news all of you know, and it led to a lot of avoidable deaths. So whenever you will have data, you will have biases, you will have to think of data governance. There's some things which we don't bother about sharing, but there are other things which I believe a lot of people will be very bothered about sharing. One other example, the third one, is the whole abortion case in the US. The app called Q, which does do fertility tracking. Clue, sorry, yeah, I'm not very good with nouns. Yeah, Clue, C-L-U-E, Clue. It became this problem because it was run by a company, and because that held data on anyone who was pregnant, the US government, after it turned down the right to abort in many states, is now sending injunction notices to the company to say, I need to know how many of your customers are currently pregnant. I want to track them to ensure that they do not get an abortion. So I think this is a very grave issue about data, and these are real stories just spanning last 2 years. I think there are many dimensions to it. So the innovator in me gets very excited, but the GP in me starts to think, what if it goes wrong? And that's why I think there needs to be a balance of regulation and proactiveness and doing great stuff. And sandboxes, that's why are very important, and regulation is extremely important. I know you had a point, yes.
Yes, hi, my name is Shiv, and I'm the student of politics at Warwick. And I just wanted to ask, all the speak of regulation kind of, politics kind of pricked my ears up, and I wanted to talk about, if we're looking at putting AI into these, into healthcare, sacrificing a lot of our data to these LLMs, what would be the security concerns regarding that, in terms of, more geopolitically? Say if we're using an American startup who is with this LLM in GPs who are consulting this American startup, patient data is now transversing borders. Then who has sovereignty over that data? And then how could that is there a chance that that could be leveraged or weaponized in some way, where crazy man Trump says that he wants to he'll withhold this certain information or data or these powers if another country refuses to agree to his trade conditions or whatnot. So where do you see that the increase in data that will obviously have to follow the use of AI in healthcare, how that the geopolitical security concerns of that?
I can give you two of my opinions. I think my two other colleagues in the panel actually deal with these things. Two of my opinions are, one is, at least I can speak on behalf of NHS, is patient records are extremely protected, and for good reasons, and that's why I believe it's very, very important that they do not cross borders in physical or digital. So they are localized, they are stored in whatever we see is actually stored in a physical location somewhere. Nothing lives nowhere. It's not on a wire or somewhere. So they are physically localized here. And number two, I think technologically we have solutions where we can send a query. I request you to read about it, called AI on a Train, which means your data doesn't leave its home base. You just send queries for recognizing patterns, and you do not pull out, and you cannot pull out specific information. And that's how or identifiers, as they're technically called, or labels. And you cannot pull that out. So you can ask a question, is how many people in this postcode walk less than or have diabetes? It will give you 30%, but you cannot say which house numbers have diabetes. It will say, sorry, I'm not allowed to give you that answer. I've super simplified it. Can it be weaponized? I just gave you an example that there are extortion attempts. I would suggest you Google 3 words: extortion, NHS, data hacking, and you will see there have been extortion attempts in the last few years about people actually asking for money that otherwise I'm going to leak all the data, which will be a legal nightmare for any hospital, private or public. So yes, it can be weaponized, absolutely, and that's why we need to be very careful about patient records.
No, yes, definitely. The simple answer is yes, it can be weaponized. It can cause, and that's why the regulations are there in place of it. That I don't think there is any country in the world today who accept the patient data or the health data of the country to go out. It's not there. In fact, some of the countries don't even allow your transportation data to go out of it.
Yeah.
So the all the the shared services or the ride services of Uber and Bolt and all that, they had to store it locally, because that also creates a pattern or creates an information about your population movement, which can easily be weaponized.
Absolutely.
Right. So yes, for different data. See, data is something, be it health, be it transportation, be it or any kind of it, can always be weaponized. That's the new warfare is. So there is even though he's crazy, but he's not wrong in that part of it thing. But yes, so see, my view is, and I'm coming back to the topic of healthcare and AI, is when we think about AI, we think about, or healthcare, we think about patient and doctor talking. That's the common thing we talk about, think about AI. And when we think about AI, sorry, is that when we think about like one matrix kind of a thing which will control everything and will command or rule us, and will, and that avatar, and which will probably eat our job and livelihood and everything, and we will all become slave. But in reality, is healthcare is much more complex as a structure. At one end is, like what Ashish and his firm is doing, is finding out or identifying the pattern or finding the cure or
Cues.
identity, for something which is there, or a personalized medication is on the other side of it. And there are probably 10 things. Some of the things, yes, AI can do. Some of the things will probably take much more training, and these LLM models, what we hear today, are incapable of it. We can take it for writing.
Yeah.
You can take it to the bank saying that ChatGPT will not become a doctor. So that's the truth, because that model of an AI who will work on that one need to be trained like a doctor first, to start behaving like a doctor, or like he
Thinking
rightly
like one.
said, yeah?
Thinking like one.
Thinking like a doctor. And that comes from the training, that comes from how it evolved or how it is coded in a way. So that will be there. So for me, if I look at from the present to the future, and and the future beyond that, AI is a part of the journey now. It's not that it will go away. It's like internet. It's not going to go away. It will change into different formats. It will change into more secure something. It will change a new angle which will protect the data and will bring in governance. Today the next level of asset management is going into blockchains, and smart contracts from the paper, what it used to be 50 years back. So that's how the AI will evolve even in healthcare, right from booking an appointment, all the way till probably a discharge and summary and everything will happen on that. And there will be but the most important thing is how it is governed and stay compliant to it, because it's still a compliant field. Healthcare is for no one is like a wild west.
Ashish.
If I can just ask, who was the person who asked this question?
Political science from
Political.
What's his name?
Shubh.
Tim, let me ask you a question, right? British Telecom, who do you think the biggest data client is?
So,
Think about it, you know the answer.
I know the answer. Would it be the UK government?
Google. Right? Now, why? Because you use Google Maps, right? The reality is, when you're actually driving on roads, you like to see what the traffic situation is and so on and so forth, right? Now, what is the telecom company actually, what is the data that they want? They want to ping your phones, right? So that they know how many phones and what is the speed at which that dense, crowd is moving, right? Because that actually obviously has value for Uber, for your traffic apps, for a whole lot of things, right? Now, do you think it's actually data that you're worried about? That British Telecom is sharing this with Google? Probably not, right? But in all honesty, if it was your personal data, right, your health records and so on and so forth, would you be more concerned about it?
Can I ask an additional question just in your line? If where Shubh is being broadcasted on a website, would you be worried about it?
Your personal location.
Your location with your photograph and your home address, will you be worried about it? And your
So
sort code.
yeah. My point was regulation is about, right, what, so de-identified data. So what Dr. Jha was actually saying, I just wanted to make it practical for you, right? De-identified data, right, is not as relevant because it can do good. Look, the reality is we make choices all the time. All of us have decided to walk around with a gadget which is actually a microwave oven that we love to hold next to our ears,
Yes.
but that captures most of our data, right? And to be very honest with you, I'm just trying to make it practical because I believe one of the girls was also asking this question. It controls a lot of your data, right? But the reason we are willing to let tech billionaires have access to that data is because we also like the convenience,
Yes.
right, that comes with it. And the point is that's the choice you have, right, between convenience and thing. But the point is that what you actually then want is regulation around how my data can be used, right? And so when it comes to health, there are policies that have actually been created by a lot of countries, right? And to your question, it can of course be used, right? There was a massive fight between Europe and US because it was found that the US was actually about a decade back using a lot of data, right, from Europe and spying on it. And the reality is that, and then there were policies that came out saying that no, Europe data has to be in servers in Europe, right? So these are regulatory changes that actually end up happening, right? And similarly, even in terms of your health record, there are policies in terms of what information can travel, what can't travel, etc. And companies have to abide by it because the fines are crazy if you do not, right? So that's that, and that is good, by the way, right? Because if your government isn't taking care of that, then you should be worried, right? The challenge that we have, I think it was a very good question that I believe Dr. Jha asked, right? That, who do you trust more, the tech billionaire or your NHS or your government, right? And the fact of the matter is that the funny part in most democracies right now is that the debate has become so vitriolic that we would rather trust, as they would refer to in movies as a blood-sucking, technocrat rather than your own government, which is not good, right? And there are good reasons for it as well, because I mean, as you said, that what if your pregnancy data is becoming weaponized against you, right, by your own government, right? So that's the kind of rubbish that is actually going on in a lot of democracies right now. But at the end of the day, right, what you really hope will happen is that you do want to be trusting your government, right, because you voted for them, right, to be actually, having the rights more than some. I mean, think about it this way: I'm sitting in India. I mean, I'm not even trusting, a billionaire from India. I'm trusting a billionaire from the US, right, with my data, right, which is, I mean, debatable, right? But that's the way the world is headed. And the point is, the only way you're going to get rationality, because there's very compelling data that is actually now being captured and trained, right, and used, right? So effectively, it's very important that we actually get our act together and start making policies. The good news is that as far as healthcare is concerned, right, there are some very workable policies, right? It has to be de-identified data that travels, right? And all those policies are good.
See, just to add one thing, and this is what we started when we started working on our company also. It's not the
data. Abhishek will be dealing with a whole lot of this mess.
Data is not important. What you do with the data is important. It's otherwise it's all ones and zeros if you look at in the computer languages. What you do with it is more important. Like, the gentleman, the first question he said was the health data or the AI modeling for preventive care.
Yeah.
That is all data. That is data coming from the health record, but it is not that, it is the name data or, your identifier data. It is taking your health data, identifying those patterns and, the spikes and the valleys and creating that layer so that it helps in prevention. So that is the question I think when everyone thinks about data need to ask is what is being done with that data.
I can just follow up quickly. So you're mentioning about what is done with the data, and if it's anonymized, then it's maybe you can push boundaries on who's manipulating the data. But then, if you're talking about say specific data or data that needs to stay within the country or like say the EU, given that health data is often more sensitive than subjectively more sensitive than transport data. Then if the data must stay within each country, therefore would the the AI technology and the AI servers would need to also be within that country, I'm guessing then, right?
Yes.
So then does that not create a bit of an arms race? Because countries with more resources, say the USA, will be able to develop, or say China will be able to develop a lot faster and create better healthcare systems compared to say Burundi, who will not have the resources or like be able to attract investment into these areas as a result. And then you will see maybe a larger, like AI and healthcare would drive inequality amongst the health of people across nations.
I think there is a point here. I have
Stargate in the US and the Middle East. President Trump has been putting all these deals in, put all these data centers with NVIDIA and all these big US companies to go in and build local data centers for AI sovereignty is the big thing right now in the tech industry. So I think what you're seeing is these data centers are being put up everywhere with the help of NVIDIA and all these big US companies to say, well, we'll help you do it. But it's basically Stargate, $500 billion. The Middle East one in Saudi and UAE and Qatar. And I was talking to a chip startup last week in Santa Clara, in California. And basically, one of the things, bringing it back to the conversation here, is he was saying, we're going to get a big deal in Oman because the regulatory hurdles in the US FDA and all in the Europe and the UK take us too long. So Oman is going to get us accelerated in terms of getting this chip out there for a medtech application. So my question to you is, as medical tech professionals, is the regulation, and I wrote an article about this 10 years ago, so I'm a journalist, so I think it's the same question. I think regulation in Western countries is way too stiff to sort of allow innovation. And I look at my mother, she can't get good tech to live in home, telehealth and medical sensors and whatever. They keep going with false alarms, they're using old technology. We're not getting the new technology because of regulatory hurdles. So it's a very simple question. When can we get AI for good?
So that was the first thing which we discussed, right? So it is not about the lack of innovation, that's not that it's not available in UK today, right? It's the adaptation of that is the challenge, and that is because of, I would say, not lack but a zero appetite for any kind of a risk. Because as an organization, when you look at it from an NHS, like the doc said, that appetite is almost zero because the cost of any risk is too high for them to bear it, and that brings all this sluggishness into the system of getting the latest in terms of technology, whether it is for diagnosis or for prevention or for any of these things which you might be hearing is readily available even in India, but it's not available in UK, is because of that. So it is not that it's not available, it is just the framework and the
I'm
framework.
not saying it's not available. I'm saying
The-
it's preventing the
Beca-
adoption.
See, because again, one thing. See, one thing which from an outside is there, but start working, and you know more than that. See, NHS is probably like 100-year-old machinery, right? So and it's a huge one, right? So it is the agility is much lower, right? And because there is so much of dependency on the reputation, trust which they have built over the last 100 years, that they can't risk for that to fail, because it's not going to be for them. It's not just going to be a failure of a company or something. It's going to be a collapse of the social structure on which this country works, which is NHS. So
But that means the other countries are going to get overtaking all the.
So it will always be there. It's always takes much longer if you try to rebuild an existing house or renovate it versus if you buy a piece of land and build a new building. It's much more faster in the second case. But do you want to uproot the whole thing? But then you are homeless for some time.
Doesn't matter.
So that's what I'm saying. Who is taking that gap for those years of being homeless? So in this case, you being homeless for the healthcare system. The country can't afford it. So you will have to gradually keep on renovating while you are living in it. So that's why it is slower.
That's I want to respond to one unanswered question which Shubh asked, which was about, is Burundi going to suffer? I think if you look at trends and if you read, sort of do a deeper read of economics and human development, everyone is growing, but those with tech and pre-existing money are growing faster. The gap is not closing, it is actually expanding, and there is a huge debate on AI will actually increase the gap rather than decrease it unless we the humans do something about it. And for your question, I think that's a beautiful example. If you use your phone here versus if you use your phone in America or you use your phone in Nigeria, the first towers they built were 4G because there was no telephone, there was no copper, there was no OFC. That's it. You put in for the first time, right? So I think we will have legacy problems, because one of the biggest challenges in this country, which adds to waiting list, which is a sore in the eyes of everyone, is patients not showing up after booking an appointment and the doctor sitting there for free. The previous Conservative Prime Minister Rishi Sunak actually recommended that anyone who doesn't show up should pay a small fine, £5. I have a theory that they lost a lot of seats just because of that suggestion, and there were people who were up in arms against him that this is not going to happen. I don't think it is so very easy for humans to change, although we keep saying that we love change. We don't, and it's very difficult. You can't still plug out fax machines from GP practices in London, central London. They have fax machines.
US has fax machines.
Yes.
I remember, and that was 10 years back. Someone was some office work and all that in the US, and they said, "Send me a fax." I said, "We don't have fax machine in India. I have not seen for a decade now." But they wanted a fax in US, so it is there because of the legacy system which they built on, and it will take time. But yes, the good thing is, yeah, it's an old construction, so we'll hold on longer.
It's a grade 2 listed building. NHS is a grade. I think we should give Ashish some airtime, and then Mr. Ghosh is here.
I think I completely agree with. Look, I mean, to the first question, I think the answer is, I think it was Churchill who had said that the powerful do what they want, and the weak suffer what they must, right? But the reality is that expecting all kinds of fairness in geopolitics is not going to happen. But the reality is that tech is accelerating growth, and to be very honest with you, to a large extent, in a lot of these countries, actually a lot of people want access to that tech, right? So effectively, therefore, another country actually has power over there. So that's to the first question. The second question, if I can put it this way, it's a difficult choice either way. You're looking at the problem from one aspect. If you remember, there were people who were talking about CRISPR, right, being used unconventionally quite easily in China, and we were actually, we were going around saying that, it's so good that, NHS has got policies to actually control misuse of these technologies, etc. But at the same time, what ends up happening is that, for example, when it comes to cancer, right? I think everyone realizes that the future is going to be immunotherapy, right? But even today, right, most and even advanced countries are treating it on the protocol system basis, right? Essentially, what you're doing is that you're actually being treated more by lawyers than doctors, because the reality is the protocol system protects doctors, right? But is it the right outcome for the patient? Most scientists today believe that immunotherapy is the future, right? But that said, that's unfortunately how governance works. They want to actually vet the system, make sure that it's safe before they adopt it, right? And I don't think that is all bad, right? Though in certain situations we might actually be impatient about it. That hey, that is available in this country. For example, it's happening right now. Since we all, with what's happening in the US, but with the current health secretary, right? The reality is that there's a whole lot of things that are happening with stem cells, right? Which till 5 years, a couple of years back, you couldn't do. Now, is it all going to be positive? God knows. Is it all going to be negative? Probably not, right? But there's, that's what happens with change, right? That there are certain positives, there are certain negatives. The way I see it is that NHS is actually more risk averse. They will actually make sure that they have tested it before they adopt something. I don't think that's all bad.
If I can just add that, yes, it's also about making sure that it's the access to that technology is for everyone and not just a microscopic view at what works for me, but a society is composed of various people, of various ways in which they can access. A 90-year-old might need a fax machine. In India, we can see that the gap between those who can access technology and those who can't is increasing, and nobody's addressing that. I'm glad that, if an NHS still has a fax machine in central London, because there might be one person who needs it, and it's okay if we can afford it for them. It should be basically, access should be for everyone, and we need to take everybody along rather than thinking about one person and not thinking about anyone.
Sorry, but in all fairness, that's not the reason that these things are happening in India. So, for example, it's actually called jumping of technologies.
Yep.
See, some of the countries that have actually, the richer countries, right? I can tell you in telecom, there were so many countries that put in so much money into copper infrastructure, right, that they adopted Ethernet infrastructure, even though it was a better technology later, right? Because, right, you'd already made the investment, right?
That
so what
is one
happens to those guys that have made the investment, right? So I would argue that, what is happening in India, because it's not a question of communication. If you look at the data prices in India, it's actually amongst the cheapest in the world. So it's actually a positive from an India perspective. It's not about access, right? It's about being a jump to technology, which is not bad.
Sorry?
Data prices and why they're cheaper can be a full argument in its own. But what I'm saying is that NHS even sends out a printout of, everything that you want. But it is up to us to say that, hey, we don't need this and we can opt out of it. But there are people who need it. So adoption of technology really needs to be kind of weighed with whether all aspects of society are gaining from it or not. And as you said very rightly, Ashish, that it's okay to be risk averse and to see what all ways in which it can work or not work, because these are again technologies that we are right now experimenting with and seeing various ways it can play out.
See, I don't think those fax machines are there, for access point of view. Right, like printouts, yes, you can, and it works both ways, right? It comes from the fact that the growth of technology in most of the Western countries have been very linear. You know, first stage, then A plus, B, step 2 and everything. Whereas the newer economies like India or even China, it has jumped. If you look at the Indian, the evolution from that, we didn't have the landlines, but the penetration of mobile was the highest. We didn't have desktops, right? But the amount of laptops, became much higher. We didn't have, the normal cell phones when they got launched up, but we had the highest consumer for smartphones. We jumped the queue because we didn't have that much of legacy as well as the leverage to go linear. And by the time we went to go into the next step, the things have moved. So we jumped what was the latest. And that's how we were able to progress.
As a
If you
concluding,
look at that, it's also because
as a
technologically it will be very difficult to reach the last mile, and we have still not reached the last mile in India. So if you look at numbers, they'll always be high because India is high in numbers. But if you look at last mile connectivity, we can still argue whether we have reached that. But here, it won't be that. So, I mean, there are pros and cons and ways of looking at every argument is what I'm trying to say.
I have just one comment to make. My comment is, I think this is a very good observation of yours, which kind of concludes this panel. What you're saying is only going to become more acute with AI, and that's something AI in healthcare should look at, is how does it solve the digital divide rather than create a bigger wedge. I think I should stop here.
I have one question, sorry. I work for HCL.
Sorry, hello.
Yeah.
If you need to be very quick and very brief.
Very quick, very brief. Yeah, NHS collects a lot of data, from on my behalf. When I'm traveling, I don't really have access to it outside UK. It's useless. Right. So how can we make this the regulation much more prevalent or future proof? Controlling data, access to NHS, and AI trying to do whatever that is trying to do, because that's something which I find it at least to me a bit a downside.
So Makarand, is that Mac? I call it Mac. I think I'll give you an answer. At King's, we have solved this problem. This is a good time to pitch. Please try to visit acrossmedical.co.uk, where anyone who is in NHS and is traveling outside of UK can carry a completely portable bucket of their digital health records, secured on a blockchain server, etc., all the jazz, and you should try it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Given the number of times we use the big T and the big US, I'm not sure how many edits I have to make in my video. Having said that, thanks to the panel members, thanks Dr. Jha, Abhishek, and thank Ashish for staying up so late in the evening or night or maybe early morning for you. But thank you so much. Really appreciate the fact all of you guys took time to join the panel. And obviously, I think we could have gone on for another 1 hour, but then we've got a hard stop. So before I wrap up for the day, a couple of quick pointers. Of course, please hang around for your bite. There are no strikes. Trains were running slow in the afternoon, but it's okay now. So don't worry. Moving on the 8th and the 15th of July, we're doing Tech Tuesday UK Extra in partnership with Google UK, and we're doing it in Google UK. And the topic is India, the AI capital and tech destination. So a lot of things, or probably some of things what we discussed today, can be thrown down, just in case. And on the 8th of July, the panel, we have Dr. Mike Short, we have Prashant back again, and we have the Officer on Special Duty Emerging Technologies from the Telangana government joining us remotely. So please pass on the communication to your friends, family members, who you think are relevant and interested to take part. The registration closes on 3rd of July evening. That's just 2 days from now. We're not doing any episode in the month of August, given it's summer break, but we are definitely back here at Reed Smith on the 2nd of September with the topic AI and financial inclusion. I'm also pleased to inform that we are partnered with GSMA Innovation Foundry.
You're
It's
gone.
not working.
Not working.
Hello. Hello. Just to repeat, I'm pleased to inform that we partner with GSMA Innovation Foundry, and we're starting on this partnership by organizing Tech Tuesdays Extra, Tech Tuesday Mixer on the 16th of September. We've got two representatives from GSMA Innovation Factory. Out here, Ahmad and Suhana. And this is going to be a long-term partnership. We'll obviously keep you posted. And to know more about today's episode, as well as the forthcoming episodes, and what's all happening at Tech Tuesdays, please follow us on LinkedIn, WhatsApp, and all other digital touchpoints that we have. Thank you once again for being here. Have a safe travel back home. But before that, have some drinks, enjoy the evening, and hang on. We may take some bites from you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Subhash, firstly, good night, and Subhash, thank you for letting me know where the toilet is. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.